Today we are going to talk about German composers, and for this we have a guest with us today, a German composer. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, if you like, you can introduce yourself and just shortly explain what you are doing, what's your profession, and then we can just guide through what we are going to talk about and which composers, and yeah.
Yes, all right. Yes, so my name is Hakan Ulus. I'm a composer from Germany, but I also lived for more than 2 years in Manchester, so I know the city. I am living now for a year already in Vienna and in Klagenfurt, Austria, where I also teach as a professor of composition and music theory. And I'm very happy to go through music history with you tonight. Yeah. So what we will do is we will start with Bach and go through different composers to show, to show the role of the composer in the society, and also to look at some handwritings of the composers and to see how they worked, with what they struggled, and what kind of music they left for humankind.
Nice. Yeah. So we could just start with Bach then.
Yes. So we chose some examples. We will listen, let's say, for each piece 2 or 3 minutes to give an impression. You are always happy to interrupt and ask questions, because this is not a presentation. I didn't prepare any kind of presentation. So it's just a talk, yeah. And I'm very much interested in your thoughts about the music. So let's start, because it's Christmas soon, with the Christmas Oratorio from Bach.
Yeah, and also always feel free to just write into the chat box or to unmute and just talk. Just how you like. Yeah.
Actually, I can also share my screen so you can see the video.
Adventszeit.
Oh,
Hakan? I am on mute. Yes, so
yeah.
All right. I said, Christina, good to see you. It's a long time no see. Okay. Yes, beautiful German Baroque music. Johann Sebastian Bach. This was a recording in Dresden, in the Frauenkirche, as you may have recognized, with Christian Thielemann, German conductor. Do you know, and if so, do you like the music of Bach?
It's sort of quite bright.
Yes.
Bit, I don't know whether regimented's the right word. It's sort of quite precise.
Mm-hmm. It's also precisely written. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. What kind of emotions does it evoke when you listen to that music?
Joy.
Joy, yeah. I think that's the best. I mean, obviously, it could be also the opposite if some pieces are not so joyful. Yeah, but this is Christmas. That's why it's pure joy. Exactly. No? So
How contemporary in terms of George Frederick Handel was Bach, because I felt there was a similarity between that piece that we've just heard and obviously elements of Handel's Messiah, which
exactly
people in England are very familiar with.
Exactly. Also good to see you, Paul.
Good to see you as well.
Yes. Right. Yes, obviously that's correct. It's the same era. And there are many similarities between the countries. And yeah, Handel was also, I mean, he was English and German. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Good.
It's weird to think about that. Bach's music wasn't that really popular when he was still alive. When hearing this music now, you can't imagine, because it's so, yeah, as Sylvan just said, it's just so joyful and bright. Yeah.
Exactly. It's quite interesting. You know, in that time, if someone said Bach, people thought of Wilhelm Friedemann Bach, yeah, one of his sons, or Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. They were more popular and famous at that time. And as you may know, in only in the 19th century, the beginning of the 19th century, Mendelssohn, another composer, found his music again, let's say, and there was a renaissance of Bach's music from that time onwards.
Yeah, in 1829, I guess.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
It was performed again. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, let me show you the handwriting of Bach, because I think it's quite interesting to see what handwritings look like and how they are linked to the process of composing. So you see, that's the manuscript, the autograph manuscript of one of Bach's pieces. I think it was sold for £2.5 million in July 2000. When is it? 2016. Yeah, just a few pages, and you can really see how perfectly it is written. So there is like no mistake. Let's say nothing is corrected. It's really just yeah. It's also a joyful writing, I would say. Very fluent. So again, there's nothing that he corrected, etc. It's very different if we look at the handwriting of Beethoven. Chaos. You see. So he really struggled with his music. And this is the autograph of his 9th symphony, part of the 9th symphony in D minor. And actually, maybe I mentioned already, I live in Vienna, and the house where he finished the 9th symphony is just a 5-minute walk from where I live. So that's quite that's
cool.
quite interesting. Yes.
Is there can you actually access this building? Is it still is it a museum or something? Where
Not a museum. It's just a building where people live. Yeah.
Really?
So you can actually go go inside that building and feel the spirit of Beethoven.
Oh wow,
Oh.
that's cool.
Right. Right. Any questions so far or comments?
And when did Bach's organ music really take off and become really popular, or was that just an underlying trend that was always there? Because certainly in the UK, he's well known for his organ pieces, and they're frequently played in churches.
Yes, I mean, that's a good point, because the role of Bach in music history is strongly linked to churches. No? So he wrote really like Kirchenmusik, how would you say? You would call it in German. But so I mean, his music was for the sake of God, but in his time, again, he was only famous in the areas where he lived, so in Leipzig mainly, where he also led the Thomaner choir, the choir there, the famous one. But after Mendelssohn conducted one of his pieces, then it took off, as you said, with all this music. Yeah.
And that was, 150 years later, after he was born or something. Like,
yes.
Yeah, that is quite some time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. All right. So let's listen to a part of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. You all know this, die Ode an die Freude.
Betreten feuertrunken, himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng
And again, joy. Well, that's what the music is about. I mean, this is music of enlightenment, we can say. It's really with the spirit of freedom. That's why it's also the hymn of the European Union, as you know. And I think, Maren, you looked up the translation of the text, right? Can you read the English translation of the text, please? I think now you are on mute.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have it here, and I really hope it's a good translation. But, oh friends, no more these sounds. Let us sing more cheerful songs. Again, cheerful, more full of joy. Joy, bright spark of divinity. Daughter of Elysium, fire-inspired we tread thy sanctuary. Thy magic power reunites all that custom has divided. All men become brothers under the sway of thy gentle wings. Whoever has created an abiding friendship or has won a true and loving wife, all who can call at least one soul theirs, join in our song of praise. But any who cannot must creep tearfully away from our circle. All creatures drink of joy at nature's breast, just and unjust, alike taste of her gift. She gave us kisses and the fruit of the vine, a tried friend to the end. Even the worm can feel contentment, and the cherub stands before God, gladly like the heavenly bodies which he set on their courses through the splendor of the firmament. Thus, brothers, you should run your race as a hero going to conquest. You millions, I embrace you. This kiss is for all the world. Brothers, above the starry canopy, there must dwell a loving Father. Do you fall and worship, you millions? World, do you know your Creator? Seek him in the heavens. Above the stars must he dwell. Yeah, well, that
Beautiful.
was the text.
Yeah, it's Schiller, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll just send you the translation in the box if you like.
Yeah, in the chat. Yeah.
On the chat. Okay, so you can just read this, and I will also send the German. Oh, come on. Oh, it's not happening.
Right. So in the classical era, Beethoven was important and two other composers. Do you know who? One of them you know for sure. Starts with M. Mozart. Right.
He was
Mozart.
not exactly German, but
Yeah, let's say, we are talking about German-speaking countries, right? And Haydn was the other important composer. And this is the so-called first Viennese school, because they all died in Vienna. Vienna was at that time the center, let's say, of European music. And many concerts were here. And especially Mozart, he worked here a lot. As you may know, he was born in Salzburg. That's why the tourism in Salzburg is very much focused on Mozart, with the Mozartkugeln, etc., etc. So I will show you now a video excerpt of the film Amadeus, which is actually a great film about Mozart's life, and which shows how funny Mozart was. So let's have a look.
Very good, Majesty. Tempo, up, lightly, then strongly. The march, Majesty, march. Again.
Bravo, Majesty.
Gentlemen, please, a little less enthusiasm, I beg you. Ah, Mozart.
Majesty.
Ah, no, please, please. It's not a holy relic. You know, we have met before, in this very room. Perhaps you don't remember it. You were only 6 years old. He was giving the most delightful concert here. As he got off the stool, he slipped and fell. My own sister, Antoinette, helped him up. And you know what he did? He jumped into her arms and said, "Will you marry me, yes or no?" You know all these gentlemen, I'm sure. The Baron van Swieten.
I'm a great admirer of yours, young man.
Oh, thank you.
Kapellmeister Bono.
Signore.
My pleasure.
The director of our opera, Count Orsini Rosenberg.
Oh, sir, yes, the honor is mine. Absolutely.
And here is our illustrious court composer, Maestro Salieri.
At last. Such immense joy. Diletto straordinario.
I know your work well, signore. Do you know, I actually composed some variations on a melody of yours.
Oh, really? Which one?
Mio caro Adonne.
Well, I'm flattered.
A funny little tune, but it yielded some good things.
And now he has returned the compliment. Herr Salieri composed this little march of welcome for you.
Really? Oh, grazie, signore. Sono commosso.
Well, there it is. Now, down to business. Young man, we're going to commission an opera from you. What do you say?
Majesty.
Did we vote in the end for German or Italian?
I will skip a little.
Well, actually, sire, if you remember, we
The funny
finally
part.
inclined.
The rest is just the same, isn't it? It doesn't really work, does it? Did you try? Shouldn't it be a bit more? Or this? This? Yes. Better? What do you think?
So you see, he makes fun of the court composer Salieri, who was actually very famous at his time. All right, that's Mozart. But now let's also listen to some Mozart. Just a minute, an excerpt of his piano sonata, K 333 in B flat major. Again, beautiful music. It sounds very easy, but to play this music is quite difficult because it's really pure. And you know, if you make a mistake, everyone will hear that you made a mistake. If you make a mistake in Chopin's music, let's say, it's fine because, you know, you would put pedal on the piano if you play Chopin's music, but to play Mozart with pedal is maybe a critical point. So you see, that's why.
It sounds very light and playful, and it's also like when you hear Mozart's pieces, for example, on the radio when you just drive with a car, and you can actually really recognize this music, like without looking who's actually the composer of this music, because it's always light, playful, not always, but most of the time. So I guess, yeah, I don't know if you've ever recognized his music, like, oh yeah, this is Mozart, without looking. I don't know if you can have this feeling as well. Yeah.
Exactly. I think he wrote this piece when he was only 23. Can you imagine?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Have you been to Salzburg, one of you? Paul, you've been. Did you visit the Mozart Museum?
We didn't have time while we were in to go actually into the museum, but we had a very nice coffee immediately outside it, and you know, it was just nice to be there, and you kind of get I suppose a joyful sense. Really, it's a very vibrant setting where he grew up and where he lived in Salzburg.
Yes.
So you can understand where that lightness of touch with his music perhaps came from, growing up in that milieu.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there is really the spirit of Mozart in the city. Yeah? Yeah. So I lived there for 5 years, and it was a great time. And it is still some kind of, I think it's one of the few cities in the world where, you know, if you say Salzburg, everyone thinks of music, of classical music.
The sound of music.
The sound of music, yes, exactly. You know, that's funny enough, you know, I lived actually in the castle where the Sound of Music was made, you know, because that's the student dorm today, which is linked to, which belongs to the University of Mozarteum, the music university in Salzburg. It was funny. There were always tourists coming, American tourists mainly, and taking pictures, huh? And disturbing us while we were practicing.
So Elizabeth just wrote in the chat that she's been to Salzburg as well.
Right, Elizabeth, did you visit the museum?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was wonderful, actually. Really, I've been a couple of times, and I think it is quite a magical city, really. It has the feeling of a wonderful town, I think. It's a wonderful place, really wonderful.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I'm on mute and off mute all the time because I have quite a noisy daughter and also a noisy cat who quite often doesn't like me talking on Zoom, so I have to keep muted quite a while.
That's fine.
Okay, that's totally fine. Thank you for your insights.
No worries.
Right. Okay. What comes after classical era? The Romantic era. In the Romantic era, do you know some composers of the Romantic era? German composers?
Was Mendelssohn one of them?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And he has a connection with Manchester as well, because he actually visited Manchester and played on one of our local organs close to where we live. It's quite noted. The church lives off its standing with Felix Mendelssohn.
Yeah. That's nice.
Didn't know this.
Yeah, St. Paul's Church in Withington. He played there.
Okay.
Do you know what he played? Or
he played, I don't know the repertoire he played, but he certainly did a performance on the church organ in that particular building.
That's interesting. Really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, two other composers were important. Johannes Brahms.
And Franz Liszt.
Franz Liszt, yes. Paganini, the violin virtuoso, and Robert Schumann, which is, and you know, who is some kind of the main figure, the protagonist of German Romantic music. Brahms was a student of Schumann, and you know, Schumann's biography was crazy. He had a life with ups and downs. He suffered bipolar disorder, and this made composing really difficult for him. So always in the depressive states, he couldn't write anything. And in the manic states, he managed to write, you know, for example, his first symphony in only 4 days. Can you imagine? 30 minutes of orchestra music in 4 days. How is that possible? No sleep, obviously. No? And it was really like a manic episode. And he wrote hundreds of songs, as well as Schubert did. At that time, the German song was something new, das deutsche Lied. And we will listen now to one of the songs from the cycle Dichterliebe im wunderschönen Monat Mai. There's also a text here. Yes, I think Maren just sent you the text, the lyrics in the chat. Im wunderschönen Monat Mai. If you compare this music to what we've listened before, Mozart and Bach, what's different? What do you feel?
Slower.
It's slower, yes.
It's very lyrical. You know, sort of nice lines to it. Not as frenetic, perhaps.
Yes, it's true. What else?
I think it's more melancholic. I think it makes you sit back and listen and think.
Yes, and I think that's really important. Yeah, exactly. Because he was a melancholic person. And yeah, you know, I mean, he was really struggling with life. And in the end of his life, he tried to commit suicide, actually in 1854. And he jumped into the river Rhine in Düsseldorf, where he lived at that time. But some people rescued him, and then they brought him to the hospital, mental hospital, psychiatry, where he lived for the last 2 years of his life and then died. Really tragic. No? And in the last 2 years, he didn't write much, only small pieces. So the last big pieces that he wrote were in 1854, so before he went to hospital. Especially his violin concerto, which is one of the masterpieces, I would say. But actually, it's not very well known because the family of Schumann, they tried to hide it after he died, because they thought that it's music of, of a person who lost his, how would they say, genius, yeah, because he was already some kind of crazy at that time. This is what they said. And then it was rediscovered by the Nazis in 1937. They said it's one of the big German violin concertos. They disliked the Mendelssohn concerto because he was Jewish, yeah, and they said Schumann is better, yeah, because he's purely German, yeah, in the Nazi sense. And yeah, that was a problem, yeah, for the violin concertos history, yeah. But now it's fully rediscovered, yeah, and main interpreters of classical music play it. For example, Patricia Kopaszynskaya has a good recording.
So Elizabeth also said that im wunderschönen Monat Mai, it's deeper and more romantic.
Yes, I would
and
agree.
Also felt like, I don't know why, but I had to immediately think about Schubert's Winterreise when listening to this. I don't know why, if there's a connection. I have no.
I mean, of course, because, again, that was the time where the German lied was invented, and to write only for voice, like staged voice and piano, that was quite new, let's say. And especially, Schubert and Schumann, and I'm sure there is a strong influence and connection between these two composers. Yeah. Yes. All right. Any other comments, questions so far before we head to the 20th century? Okay. So there was the second Viennese school. As we said, Beethoven, Haydn, Mozart, they all died in Vienna. And the three other composers, the second Viennese school, Arnold Schönberg, Alban Berg, and Webern, they all were born in Vienna. So, they took the spirit of the first Viennese school, some kind of. Yeah? And Arnold Schönberg was a radical composer. He said, I'm not interested anymore in the harmonies of the last centuries, but I try to write music now with dissonances. Yeah, so it's dissonant music. And especially in the beginning of the 20th century, before World War I, it was in general a radical time, and even more later, after World War II. The piece I'm going to play now is his short piece, Ein Überlebender aus Warschau. So this is a piece where he composes his experiences of World War II. He, as a Jew himself, he escaped to the US, and then he lived his life there, but still family members, and also his career in Germany was very strongly, interrupted, by the Nazi regime. So let's listen also here a couple of minutes. It's for orchestra and narrator.
unconscious most of the time. I remember only the grandiose moment when they all started to sing as if prearranged. The old prayer they had neglected for so many years. The forgotten creed. But I have no recollection how I got underground to live in the sewers of Warsaw for so long a time. The day began as usual. Reveille when it still was dark. Get out, whether you slept or whether worries kept you awake the whole night. You had been separated from your children, from your wife, from your parents. You don't know what happened to them. How could you sleep? The trumpets again. Get out. The sergeant will be furious. They came out, some very slow. The old ones, the sick ones, some with nervous agility. They feel the sergeant, they hurry as much as they can, in vain. Much too much noise, much too much commotion, and not fast enough. The Feldwebel shouts, Achtung, stillgestanden! Hört uns mal, oder soll ich mit mir Wertkolben nachhelfen? Na gut, wenn ihr es durchaus haben wollt. The sergeant and his subordinates hit everybody. Young or old, quiet or nervous, guilty or innocent. It was painful to hear them groaning and moaning. I heard it, though I had been hit very hard. So hard that I could not help falling down.
Right. I think that's a very good example of how a composer comments things that happened in society and in the world with his music and expresses his artistic view, on the world. What do you think? How does this music feel? Have you ever heard something like this before?
It was very reminiscent of a lot of film music, where the composer obviously is reacting to scenarios and scenes. It reminded me quite a bit of the work of Bernard Herrmann, the American film composer. That very discordant, disjointed approach, which he has obviously probably used Schoenberg as his model, because obviously he was later than Schoenberg and writing in a different context, obviously.
Yeah.
It's sort of very chaotic in a way, and it's very uncomfortable listening, which it should be. It's not easy to listen to it.
Yes.
It's unpleasant, but because of the what the narrator's saying, it necessarily needs to be like that.
Yes, that's true. Oh, exactly. I mean, if you look at the score and would analyze it in musical terms, it is actually very structured and not chaotic at all. But I know what you mean. No, it is very different to the music that we've listened before, and it is really music that needs to be written like that. No?
Yeah, you can actually really hear, like there was one part where you could hear the drums from afar. I think it appeared when the soldiers were coming, so it's really precise. And yeah, it's really, yeah, as you said, unpleasant to listen to because it kind of reflects the emotions of this narrator. And I have a question. In the beginning, it says that it's also with a male choir. Do you know why it's a male choir? Why he chose just men?
I don't know. This wouldn't be politically correct today.
Yeah.
Should be 50-50. No, I don't know, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point. You know, the Arnold Schönberg Research Center is also a 5-minute walk from my home here, so I could go there and ask after the lockdown.
Maybe it was just because of his view of his, obviously he's a man, so maybe that was his view of many other men who went through this as well, with losing their wives and children. Maybe this could be a reason.
I don't know. Maybe it's only also just practical reasons, because they're the only men who could, you know.
Yeah,
available.
well, maybe this.
Yeah, we don't know. But I mean, the interesting thing is the choir only comes at the end, and they sing the Jewish credo. No? I mean, we can just listen here. Right, so you see, it's a bit like the Beethoven effect, no? In the Ninth Symphony, where the choir waits for an hour and then starts to sing. Yeah. All right. So after World War II, music changed. Not only music, all the arts changed, and especially Cologne was important at that time for music. In Cologne, there was one of the first studios for electronic music. So composers said, now I want to write music for, you know, with instruments that I can find in a radio station. No classical instruments anymore. And Karl-Heinz Stockhausen is the main composer here, who was the pioneer of electronic music, and who is actually also on the cover of the Sgt. Pepper album of the Beatles, yeah, because the Beatles like this music. So he's like the father, really, of electronic music. Have you heard this name before, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen? Yes, you did. So maybe you know this piece then. It's called Gesang der Jünglinge, which goes actually back to the Bible. So it's some kind of a religious piece. And he also wanted, you know, he wanted the music to be played in the Kölner Dom, in the cathedral, the Cologne Cathedral, but they said no. They thought it's too radical. And let's listen. Yes, that was radical music at that time, in the 50s. I mean, as you have heard, there is a child's voice. He recorded that voice, and then he mixed it with electronically produced sounds in the studio, in the radio studio in Cologne. What do you feel when you listen to that kind of music?
I kind of feel focused on it, like I'm not thinking about anything else other than that. Just almost like meditative.
Right, yeah.
For me, the cacophony of sounds, the different sounds, is a bit disturbing. I think I couldn't listen to that sort of music for a very long period. I think for me, just short listening to music like this, interspersed with more joyful music.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can see the influence there coming through of the sounds of the Beatles.
Right.
And some of the newer, their later songs, not the very early songs, but like Lucy, the intro to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
All right.
The very beginning of the digital version, and some of Yellow Submarine, and some of the intro, I would say, has this type of sound that I recognize.
Yeah, and I think Elizabeth also wrote in the chat, it sounds like another world, science fiction.
Yeah,
some kind of music from the universe, from another universe. So.
I find it soothing, but I suppose it's not to everyone's taste.
Yeah. Actually, you know, Stockhausen was a bit crazy. He said, I'm not a human being. I'm not from this planet. I'm from Sirius, another planet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can show you a couple of minutes of an interview. Actually, it's here. So you have an impression how he looks like.
No, Antonio, you always have the same pitch. But I want very different pitches, if you please.
Didn't get off to a great start. Could you tell me what the most beautiful sound or the most interesting sound that you've ever heard is?
No.
So what do you think about melody? Do you hum tunes like we all
Absolutely.
do? Do you whistle?
I whistle a lot.
What do you whistle?
Well, the melodies that I write.
Your own stuff?
Yes.
Do you like to whistle anyone else, a sort of Mozart or Bach or people? Or?
Mozart, when I conducted Mozart. I conducted several works for records, etc. Then I whistled also these Mozart works.
Doesn't appear that you're slowing down despite being in your late 70s. What's a typical working day for you at home?
I compose from about 10 o'clock until 1 o'clock, and then from about 3 o'clock to 7, and then again from 8 to 10, sometimes later. And I write at the table, or half of my life I have spent in a studio for electronic music, and I produced the sounds, and during the night I would make the sketches for the next morning every night.
Do things come to you in dreams in the night as well? I know that...
Many times.
Yes, I mean the Helicopter Quartet, I think,
I have
was
dreamt
a dream.
quite a few works completely in a dream, but not all the notes, but just how it was performed.
Yes, this is one of his famous pieces, the helicopter string quartet. Yeah, so you would have helicopters in the air, and it's very expensive to perform, but it was performed a couple of times, also at the Salzburg Festival, Salzburger Festspiele, and at the Holland Festival too. So I mean, he is really one of the composers who changed music history. Yeah.
His music almost sounds like a nightmare when I listen to it. Like, I don't know, especially like with the voices of the boys singing, or I don't know, not like a choir, but everyone just as he pleases. And now this helicopter string quartet, it's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. You know, if you listen to that music the first time, it can, yeah, you can have these kind of associations. But, you know, I listened to that music when I was a child. So it's something very normal to me. Yeah? So I think I listened to Stadtland the first time when I was around 7 or 8. Yeah. And so when you get used to these kind of music, you maybe listen to it from another perspective.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when I listen to it, it doesn't. No, I just try to, as Christina said, I just try to be in the sound and, yeah, try to focus on the piece. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How does that music look on the page?
Oh, that's a good point.
And how much is left up to the performers to sort of interpret sort of notations he's written?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, it depends really on the pieces. His oeuvre is quite big, but you know, just wait. I have a score here. Just a second.
So does anyone listen to, or did anyone listen to this music to Stockhausen before? Like,
no, I haven't. I've only listened to the Beatles album, the latest one, the digitally enhanced, and it has some very nice intros. Classical mixed with some of this type of music that I think work well together.
oh, interesting.
It's very uplifting, and yeah, I find it.
So I have a score here of this orchestra piece, Gruppen, for 3 orchestras actually. And, you know, if you look at it, it is normal notation.
Sorry, is it possible for you to be bigger? Yeah, it's blurred.
Maybe like that. It's blurred.
Yeah.
All right. There is this. Okay. I need to wait. Now it should be okay. Some pages. Can you see something?
Yeah. Can you, Marin? Can you make him so he's the full screen?
I think I just need to talk for that, right? So maybe now you can see me. No.
Is it working now?
Okay.
For me, it's working. I think if you change.
Okay. Yeah, just change screen now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you know, it's actually, yeah, it's not very. I mean, it is radical also in notation. No? But as your question is, it depends really on the pieces. His earlier pieces were in traditional notation, but then he tried to do graphic notation, etc., etc. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this was the conductor's version, or was it?
Yes, conductor's version.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Have you conducted any of his work?
Me? No.
Yeah.
I'm not a
Is it
conductor.
difficult, do you think?
Yes, I think it's difficult to conduct because he was very precise about tempo, for example. And I mean, he was very strict in rehearsals. I haven't met him. He died before he died in 2007, I think. And I think at that time I was too shy to write him. Now I would.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more self-confident.
Yeah.
But no. Yeah.
One composer that I thought you might have referred to this evening was Richard Wagner. Where does he fit into this continuum? Obviously, sort of crosses into the 20th century from the 19th.
Yes. No, so it's...
Is he a little controversial, Wagner?
Yes, he is. Do you know why, Christina?
I think a certain man liked his music. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I don't know. It always makes me think of.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
A particular period in history that makes it difficult to listen to.
Yes.
And it sounds very angry.
I mean, listening to one of Wagner's operas is or can be a life-changing event. They're so long and intense, emotionally intense.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are 4 hours, as you may know. And I mean, Paul, it comes the end of the 19th century, right?
Yeah.
So it is all already very radical and some kind of looks into the 20th century. And was some kind of was very important for other composers like Mahler, who also lived here, 5-minute walk from here. He lived there for 11 years. Right, yeah. And what you said, Christina, Richard Wagner, yes, his music was used some kind of by the NS regime. Hitler. No? He said he was the greatest German composer. No? Why? Because he also wrote about music, and he said that he has this famous text about Jews in music, and he said Jews can't write music, and he said many bad things obviously about Jews. And there was a scandal actually where Daniel Barenboim, who is also a Jew, performed his music the first time in Israel. In the 50s, 60s, I'm not sure when. And then there was a scandal because the Jewish audience, they interrupted the music and said, no, we don't want to listen to that kind of music in the Holy Land. No? And then Barenboim tried to explain them, there is this music, which is great from another world, right? And there is just a person, a human being with many mistakes, etc., etc. So he tried to separate these two things. Yeah. I mean, if you look back at all these composers, they were some kind of miserable beings. Not a good character, we would say, today. So they had many, I don't know, debts they wouldn't pay back, and many affairs with, many, even that's very funny. In Vienna, once I went for a walk with my wife, and then we saw the building. It said that's the place where Mozart has had his first affair, with another woman. So you see, one of I don't know how many, Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Then I would show you the last two pieces.
I think Paul wanted to say
Paul, you have a question.
I just wondered whether there were any examples of female composers in the German pantheon. Obviously, we're very, very familiar with a number of those male composers, but I'm just wondering about female composers and whether there's anybody of particular note that we should perhaps think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big problem, obviously, because it was some kind of a job for men, yeah, at that time. Two important composers were Clara Schumann, so the wife of Robert Schumann, but Robert told his wife always to stop composing, you know. He didn't like that, because he was, yeah. No. But I mean, Clara Schumann was, as you know, the most famous, or one of the most famous pianists at the time. And I think she was also at this Deutsche Mark, on the cover of one of the notes. Do you remember that, Marin? Or?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I remember this.
Right.
I was old enough to just know the change from Mark to Euro.
Exactly. So I will show you. Ja, auf dem 100er Schein. So you see, that's Clara. Just before the euro came. And another important one, Fanny Hensel. Yeah, also very good composer. But I mean, today it's different, Paul. You know, there are even composers competitions only for female composers, you know, just to make them stronger in society, you know, give them a voice. And I think that's obviously very important. Yeah.
Are these competitions in Germany or are these international competitions?
International.
International.
Yeah. Yeah. Also in music academies, it's they always strive for 50-50 equality. Yeah. Okay, so two more examples. One of them, Klaus-Steffen Mahnkopf, German composer, professor of composition at the university in Leipzig. My former teacher, I have to say. So, this is one of the pieces I really like of him, Medusa, an oboe concerto, which goes back to the Medusa from Greek mythology. No? So let's listen also a couple of minutes here. I mean, this is really modern music now. No, has nothing to do with Mozart or I don't know. This is joyful, nice music. All right. What's your impression?
Mainly, is it woodwind?
Yes, I mean the oboe is the soloist, yes.
And similar in some respects to jazz.
Yeah, that's a good point. No? Many people said that it sounds like free jazz. Yeah.
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 It's almost like he's exploring or pushing the boundaries of what the oboe is capable of.
Yeah, exactly. This is what he wanted to achieve. Yeah.
Some of it sounds very Turkish or Middle Eastern.
Why do you
maybe
think so?
quarter? Has he got some quarter notes in there and bending notes?
Yes.
And yeah.
Are you musically trained? Because you know some really good terms, music theoretical terms.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a couple of Turkish dance groups, and they have. I'm not sure if it's a clarinet, and it's very waily, you know, and it sounded a bit like that in places. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There are microtones in it.
Yeah.
That's what makes the impression, maybe. Yeah. Again, let's have a look at the handwriting. That's quite interesting. It's so precise. You wouldn't say that it's handwritten, no? But it is. That's hyper complex music.
That's all handwritten?
Yes, it's handwritten. Crazy, right? Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, this must take so much time.
Yes, I think it really took. I mean, it says, right, April 1990 to November 92. Oh. Yeah, 2 years of work. But he only composed this, no, some kind of nothing else.
Must be very, very difficult to conduct us again and to play.
Paul, this is difficult, no? Or I think, was it you, Paul, who asked this question? I don't know. But yeah, this is really difficult to conduct. Right. Okay. And a very last example. Oh, you know, I will show you two more. One very short. At that time, Helmut Lachenmann was another important composer. He tried to make music out of noises, but noises that you can produce on instruments, not just noises from daily objects, you know, on the table or something like this. This was done before in France. It was the so-called musique concrète, so concrete music. But he did the so-called musique concrète instrumentale, so concrete music with instruments. So I will show you just a short excerpt of a video where you can also see how the sounds are produced on the instrument. The piece is called Pression. It's written for cello solo. So you see, that's really redefining what music can be. No? Yeah, that was an important thing. And he did it with all kind of instruments. So there's another piece called Guero for piano. He plays it. That's the composer.
again, it would be interesting to see the notations for that.
I will show you in a minute.
Yeah.
Because this is really different notation. Yeah. Right. It's really serious music. So you see how seriously he plays it, right? The composer. And yeah, it's very much, say it again?
Sorry, what's he doing with the keys? Is he sort of flicking them to get that tapping sound?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
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 I'll show you the notation for this.
It's interesting to see what you call music and what where music starts.
Exactly. No? So you see, that's really, it doesn't look like standard music notation, right? It's very graphic, and it doesn't tell you how the music would sound, but it tells you what to do. Yeah, what to do to achieve a certain sound. That's the approach to notation, that piece.
So are these dots, are these meant to be one key, a specific key on the piano, or is it just random keys?
Yeah, it's not about the keys. It's rather about intensity, of how to play something. It's a bit louder at that play part, etc. Yeah, because anyway, I mean, as you listen, there is no pitch. Yeah. So it's not important if it's a E or E flat or I don't know. Yeah. Yes.
Interesting.
I think that's actually enough of music. Because that's a good point in music history. You know, I can tell you some more things about the current situation, of composers in Germany. Also from my experience, Germany and Austria it is luxury to live in Germany or Austria as a composer, because there are many opportunities for young composers. Obviously, it's not easy. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like you study medicine and then you start immediately with a good job and you get paid well. I don't know. No, it's hard. And there are many composers, and everyone wants to get this scholarship or that prize or that commission. But, there's only one scholarship and then 300 people apply, So you need to be some kind of an outstanding composer, but not only that, because we know life is not easy as that. You need to have also luck. No? And so that's the situation in general. And music aesthetically, obviously we live in a free world, in a free democratic society. So in arts also some kind of everything is possible. No? So you can do what you want. But especially nowadays, people discuss very much about the influence of digital media on music. No? So what can it mean if we try to, I don't know, use a smartphone, an iPhone, the newest model, and try to make music with that, for example. Or people write music for computers. So they really react to things that are happening in the society again nowadays. Yeah, are there any questions?
So it seems like there are no questions right now.
I have a question, if that's okay, Hakan. Of the eras that you've spoken to us about this evening, which are your favourite? Do you have a specific one that you would go more to relax to, or to have inspiration from yourself as a composer? Are you influenced very much by Vienna where you are, or where do your influences come from? Where do you draw your inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say all the pieces that I showed tonight are very close to my heart. I like them. That's why I chose them. But especially the Medusa piece for the oboe concerto. It's really made a big impression on me when I listened to it the first time. I mean, since this music is so complex, it's never performed, you know. Maybe I think there were only 3 performances of that piece in more than, like in 30 years. You know? So this would be really like one of my dreams in life, to listen to experience that piece in a concert. You know? But I know it's, I don't know if it will happen.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be quite powerful, actually, to
Yes.
sit in a room with that music would be fascinating, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
And I mean, in general, about inspiration, that's a good point. I mean, Vienna is an inspiring place. What I like is to go from coffee house to coffee house, you know, to drink a coffee. Then I read a bit newspaper. Then I write maybe some notes. Then I go to the next one. And there are so many historical coffee houses. And this what inspires me, some kind of.
Thank you.
A question.
Christina, please.
Is there a particular instrument which is most in demand in orchestra? Maybe not just professional, but also amateur orchestras in general?
I think it goes, you know, it's again the classical instruments, violin, I would say, and piano. This is what people start. Or, you know, in school, in German schools, they start with recorders.
Yes.
Recorders, yeah.
Yes, same here, yeah.
Same there, all right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Woodwind less popular than string, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
less popular.
Yeah, a bit maybe. Yeah. You know, when I think back of when I studied at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, it's crazy again, because there are so many pianists who want to get in that university, and let's say there are only 3 free spots, and 200 pianists from all over the world would apply. And most of them are really good, but they can't get it if there are only 3. So you see how popular this instrument is.
Yeah.
Does any one of you play an instrument? That will be interesting to know. Yeah, what do you play, Sevan?
I'm an amateur flautist.
All right.
That's nice.
So you know how to play microtones?
Sort of. Yes. Yeah, bending notes. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Finger slaps. Yeah.
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 Yeah. My daughter's struggling with violin.
Okay.
Lots of tears, probably.
Yes.
Yeah, I know this.
And was in a dilemma whether to do viola or violin. But, she went for violin.
That's a good thing. I guess you know all the jokes about violas, so maybe this is...
No, I'm not familiar with any jokes. No, about the viola.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions you have or comments?
I found it fascinating and interesting, sort of a whistle-stop tour, but yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
Welcome.
And I enjoy the film, the Amadeus film.
Yes,
I've seen it.
It's really good.
Yes, I've seen it a couple of times. It's a film I can always go back to. I like it. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it's actually kind of mandatory here in Germany to watch this movie in school, I think. Hakan, have you watched this movie in school?
No.
No?
Have you?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always feel Salieri's humiliation because it's portrayed so well, and the dynamic between Mozart and Salieri, and yeah, when he's at the party, Mozart, and he's mocking his efforts at composing, and
yeah. So I guess if there are no more comments or questions, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, and for your questions and comments, also for these discussions. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.